Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business here with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. We're early fireworks on Wall Street this week with the tech names leading the parade here. Stocks finishing mostly higher today. It was a shortened holiday trading session. Investors undeterred by labor market and service sector reports that suggest the economy may be cooling down some these days. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 24 points, but the S&P 500 ended higher at up 28 to 5,537, and the Nasdaq popped another 160 points to 18,188. Both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq closing at record highs just before the 4th of July holiday tomorrow. Wall Street will be taking a break. The notes from the Fed's last meeting came out today showing Fed officials are not in any agreement over how many months of good inflation data, so-called good inflation data, might be needed before the Fed might be confident enough that low inflation was here to stay before cutting interest rates. The notes from that last meeting noted that the uncertainty associated with the economic outlook and how long it would be appropriate to maintain a restrictive policy stance. Some Fed officials emphasized the need for patience in allowing the Fed's current level of rates to dampen demand and moderate inflation pressures. Several of the Fed policymakers said that the rate hikes might be needed if inflation stays at its elevated level or increases further. On the other hand, a number of Fed policymakers said the Fed should stand ready to respond to unexpected economic weakness. There was some concern that the job market was softening and that slowing demand might generate a larger unemployment response than had been seen in the recent past. On the political front, we see President Trump's lead against President Biden has widened following the presidential debate this past week. Looks like President Trump leading President Biden now 49 to 43%. That's according to the latest New York Times Siena College poll. Overall, 74% of voters in that poll viewed President Biden as too old for the job, up 5 percentage points since that famous debate. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris has moved ahead of President Biden in some betting markets as to who would be the candidate to take on former President Trump in the presidential election. Middle East heating up again. Oil prices settling higher today on light trading volume ahead of the Independence holiday tomorrow. We see crude oil in New York moving up $1.07 to $83.88 a barrel. And Brent crude in London, the global benchmark, rising $1.10 to $87.34 a barrel, getting close to $90 a barrel once again. A senior Hezbollah commander was killed today in an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon. He was one of the highest-ranking officials in the terror group to be killed in 9 months of fighting along the border. The terror group responded by firing at least 100 rockets in northern Israel today. And here's another thing impacting the price of oil. Hurricane Beryl making history as the earliest Category 5 Atlantic storm in history, serving as a warning now to the energy industry. That looks like there's more risk these days of more intense storms and challenges for the production of oil, natural gas, and gasoline as Beryl moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Gold futures moving higher today, in fact, settling the highest we've seen in about a month. We see gold climbing nearly $40 today to $2,372.90 an ounce. Silver also getting a pop today of $1.16 to $30.82 an ounce, heading for its largest daily percentage rise since June 20th today. Amazon in the spotlight with Jeff Bezos looking to sell more of Amazon stock, according to a recent filing. He's been on a selling spree as the stock's been hitting record highs lately. As we move closer to the November presidential election, more attention being focused on the different views on tax policy between the two major candidates, with President Biden basically vowing to raise taxes, President Trump vowing to cut taxes. A recent G20 proposal for a globally coordinated wealth tax on the world's billionaires, also highlighting a system being developed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is looking to raise taxes on basically everything. We'll talk about that with Adam Michel, Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute, which he focuses on analyzing the economic and budgetary effects of taxation here in the U.S. And the 4th of July, tomorrow, is American as mom and apple pie and fireworks. Americans love fireworks, but our pets, not so much. It can be a terrifying time for dogs, cats, birds, and other pets. Some can end up in the vet's office after the holiday. I'll talk about that with Dr. Karen Halligan, host of Collars and Cents on your favorite station right here, 790 KBC. That airs Thursday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. She's also the author of the award-winning book, Doc Halligan's What Every Pet Owner Should Know, Prescriptions for Happy, Healthy Cats and Dogs. But first, let's focus on the animals on Wall Street today, the bulls and the bears. They were in a tug of war today ahead of the holiday break. Joining us live now, Brian Perry, investment expert, chief investment strategist, and portfolio manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com, also author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian Perry, thanks for taking the call here this afternoon.
Really great, Frank. Animal spirits were at work today and have been for the better part of the last week here. It's been really, the revisiting of the Magnificent Seven. They're right back at it. And we saw some evidence here, what you noted in your opening comments, of slowing economy here that's not just a blurb or a blip. This ISM services number, which came in at 48.8, that's a second decline in 3 months. So now we're starting to see a trend here in the non-manufacturing areas here, which is the biggest part of the economy here, the services area. So this is important here. You had a nice rally in treasuries here. The Atlanta Fed GDP lowered their Q2 numbers here for GDP growth to 1.5 from 1.7% following the data that came out this morning. Labor market is starting to soften here. ADP numbers, the change was 150,000 jobs created versus a forecast of 163. So this is one of the Fed's dual mandates here is labor, and they're starting to see a reduction in the growth of labor, growth nonetheless, but still at a slower pace. So the market traded higher, led by mega cap tech, and this is the drumbeat that's been going on and will continue to go on in my view. Big stories of the week. I mean, we're only here Wednesday, and it's a week full of big events here. You have Paramount, one of the great quote take unders of all time here, trading that they're going to go out at $15 a share, and the stock traded as high as $100 back in 2021. Tesla, they beat deliveries, and their forecasts were good for the current quarter here. The robo-taxi wave seems like it's starting to catch hold here. You got San Francisco now allowing Waymo and Cruise to come in and start operating. You just really have the full self-driving cycle here is starting to take hold here. So some price increases there, and it looks like there's but at the same time, today's unusual option activity, huge put buying in Tesla after making a move here from 180 to 250, just an enormous pop in Tesla stock in the last week. NVIDIA, it looks like the consolidation's over here. It looks like a new leg higher is underway. The stock was up nicely today after a lot of back and filling there. You've had you had First Solar, which was disclosed that there's a lot of Democratic donors that made off pretty well in that company here in terms of this whole build out of the green the green legislation here, and that stock just crashed from 307 to 220 here as the company came under a lot of scrutiny here. A lot of on the insider tip sheet, you got Nancy Pelosi buying 10,000 shares of NVIDIA, and somewhere between $1 million and $5 million in call options on Broadcom we just disclosed this last week. Apple, big story here too, looking to bundle OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini in what they are labeling is called Apple Intelligence, which is rumored to be a paid-for service going forward for new iPhones. Hence, we've had a big breakout in Apple recently, which is all about this whole global refreshment cycle, Frank, in terms of all the devices and wireless and desktops and laptops and everything else that's going to have to basically incorporate AI into their guts of the machines. So this is taking hold right now, and which is causing a lot of people to just have that aha moment about where am I in my AI investment portfolio. Shipments to China for iPhones also were up 40% during the course of May, prompting a lot of price target increases here by Wall Street analysts. Now you got Joe Biden, after this horrible debate, just a total meltdown there. Now he's speaking out today big time against the GLP makers, the weight loss drug makers, namely Lilly and Novo Nordisk, to really bring down prices here for weight loss drugs. That weighed on the stocks here. And then you basically have Bill Gates, stepping up big time, making significant investments in nuclear power, which is something that I've been talking about here for some time now. So now he's gotten religion in this particular renewable area. And then you've got, which is brand new information here pretty much, is you got KKR now stepping in big time after watching Blackstone step in big. And they're buying luxury apartment portfolios at deep discounts from where they were trading here just a year and a half ago. They believe that apartment rents are going to stay higher because a lot of people are just going to say, you know what, housing prices are too high, the cost of entry is just too much. I'm just going to go ahead and just plunk a lot of money in my retirement account and continue to just rent. And there seems to be this is a kind of a new narrative in this whole area of commercial real estate. But if you go down the list and look at all the corporate the multifamily housing REITs that are trading out there, they're all starting to turn higher based upon this narrative, Frank. And it's an interesting development here that I find to be one that's not even being talked about. Back to you.
Terrific, Brian. Thank you for that thorough analysis. As always, on the air live with investment expert Brian Perry at Mint Asset Management, also author of the 25% Cash Machine, by the way. That was covered a lot of those bases there. What about this pop we've seen suddenly in gold and silver here ahead of the 4th of July? Some fireworks in the commodity markets today. Oil also higher. Give us your assessment of what's happening there.
Well, definitely a buyer of silver and gold here. Silver actually had a bigger pop than gold. And you've got the basis of this is you've got, it looks like the Fed is going to have to start lowering rates here. And, the writing's on the wall. In fact, when you noted that some of the Fed members were thinking about raising rates, that really, it scratches my head to wonder about what that's about, because I think the evidence is clearly on the side of lowering rates here, even maybe as early as the July 31st meeting here. So we'll see about it. But the gold market here, again, the people are starting to speculate that the dollar is going to start to lose value if rates start to come down. And also that you've got a lot of geopolitical tension out there, which you noted also, and so that's also happening here. And you've got a continuation of a longer-term secular spiraling downward slope of fiat currencies, namely the euro and the Chinese yuan and the Japanese yen, and ultimately probably the U.S. dollar. So there's just people that are they're initiating and buying and increasing their positions in precious metals as a hedge, even at the expense of watching the crypto market really take a bath here in the last week and a half.
On there live with Brian Perry, and what about the cryptos, Brian? Some of our analysts have noted this correlation between the NASDAQ and cryptos, and we see the NASDAQ at a record high here today, but Bitcoin well off its all-time high, about 10,000 or so below it, up about 600 now for Bitcoin to around 60,000 or so. What are your thoughts about what's happening in the crypto space here now?
Well, there's a story going around that there was when they found like a lot of Bitcoin stored in these offshore accounts and things of this nature that were bought at very low levels there, like $15,000 or less. And so there's a general feeling that, and it was a lot of coins apparently, like in the hundreds of thousands, if not close to a million or two. And so apparently that this is not getting reported very well. But there's been a lot of dumping of Bitcoin because of, now you're up 4 times your money, and they've been able to, recover a lot of lost coin. There's always been a theory that there's about 3 to 4 million Bitcoin that are just out there that are lost and gone forever for a number of reasons. So it's just the recovery of the Bitcoin from different methods has prompted a lot of selling. That's the story out there, and that's all I can really see as to why there's not a correlation, Frank, between now with Bitcoin down here on 61,000 instead of where it was just a week and a half ago at 71,000 versus the NASDAQ being at new all-time highs. Normally they're highly correlated, but I think there's some supply coming on the market. I think that really explains it.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and this is something that John Najarian, who I talked to yesterday on this program, so for anyone that wants to hear his thoughts on it, this has to do with the, what you referenced, has to do with the collapsed Bitcoin exchange, Mt. Gox, about to unload, according to various reports, $9 billion of coins onto the market, and like yourself, John Najarian thinks that is a factor here. on what we're seeing in the latest crypto pricing action. So thanks for underlining that important point, which we have covered here with John Najarian last couple of weeks. So we keeping an eye on that. At this point, Brian Perry, let me ask you the big question here ahead of the 4th of July holiday break. Where are you putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Well, we've seen for retailers out there, I think that people are going to still, if they don't order online, they're going to be walking into Best Buy. And Best Buy had a big pop here on this whole notion of this global refresh cycle that's going on with computers and everything else. Stock ran up to like 93. It's pulled back here to 82. It's a clean breakout, high volume breakout here. So I started buying Best Buy today. BBY is your symbol there. And two other more traditional chip makers here, but you've got a broadening out here of AI going into a number of industries here. So you've got Analog Devices, ADI, that's Alpha Delta India, okay? And you've also got Texas Instruments, which is TXN, one of the larger analog makers out there, but their businesses touch literally every industry in the world, just about. And also Western Digital, for the memory business here, because you've got to have a lot of memory here, which goes into AI too. And they're not really, the most touted name out there, but it's a very, very beautiful chart with the company here that's got some big earnings forecast increases going forward. Again, NVIDIA here broke out today on a very short-term technical basis here. It looks like it held support, and now money's in there buying it again. And we've talked about these pair trades here, being short Starbucks and long Dutch Bros, BROS here as a way to go. That's working out, as well as in the shoemaker Nike. And LeBron got a new contract today, $104 million, right, for a 2-year deal. No pop in the Nike stock. I thought that was interesting here. And then you got On Holdings here, which is the more popular Swiss maker of running and workout and training shoes. And also with rates coming down here and this big property acquisition binge that's going on here in private equity, people should look at Blackstone here, BX and KKR, which just recently got added to the S&P 500 as two places. If you want to just, I would avoid the banks altogether. Notwithstanding J.P. Morgan possibly, but really BX and KKR are the two horsemen in the private equity sector that you can buy as an investor. And certainly in the nuclear trade, with Gates coming on board and a 10-year backlog here in uranium, the ETF URA makes a lot of sense here, and certainly gold and silver as we talked about earlier. And I took a trade in Reddit, RDDT, which had a big move here from 52 to like 75 here just in the last week and a half. So sometimes when you get a big spike like that, a parabolic vertical move, it's just best to take it off, because these are volatile times with volatile stocks, and that was a great IPO, but it's a bit over its skis right now, Frank.
All right, and you mentioned it briefly, the Paramount reported deal, Paramount Global acquisition that we had. We had that big news yesterday already. Skydance Media and Sherry Redstone's National Amusements have quietly renewed acquisition talks and have reached a tentative agreement to acquire Paramount Global, the parent company of Paramount Studios and CBS. The deal now reportedly will be reviewed by Paramount Global's special committee. Barely a move on the upside of Paramount stock here, as you noted, up 74 cents to 11.46. So what are your thoughts on this one and any other potential merger deals, especially here in Hollywood?
Well, I do like, the deal's getting done at 15 at some point in time here, so stocks will always trade at a discount to their closing price. So there's an arbitrage here taking place, which is going to take a while to work out, and there's a lot of wrinkles in this deal still. But it looks like it's going to get, the ink is going to dry on this over the weekend here. You got to look at Disney down here. It's just it's pulled all the way back from 123 to 98, and it just seems as if the Q cards will basically come to say maybe we need to just break this company up, and where the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Even though there was a large attempt to do that earlier, it just seems as if that right now Disney is trading at a nice price, and so for those that want to do something in this space here, that looks like coming into the summer travel season here, it just seems as if Disney is a good place to start shopping for discounted assets. You also saw Cedar Fair and what's the other name there? Six Flags. They merged over the weekend or in the past week. So there's some consolidation here. There's just a lot of action happening here within the amusement sector and the streaming sector, and it just seems as if there's going to be a lot of deal flow Frank, in the space here, which I think Disney is going to have to start making some decisions.
Terrific, Brian. Well, thank you very much for hitting on all of these important points heading into the holiday break tomorrow. I could talk to you for hours, by the way, so I so enjoy our conversations. I know the audience does, too. Brian Perry, investment expert, chief investment strategist, and portfolio manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com. Also author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian, we wish you a happy 4th of July holiday, and thank you very much for taking the call.
Okay, happy 4th to you and your audience, Frank, so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's nuts out there on the freeways. A big travel weekend. Let's get the latest on your ride now here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. We had some fireworks on Wall Street today, and the tech names, NASDAQ at a record high ahead of the 4th of July holiday break tomorrow. Closing up another 160 points, 2 record-shattering days in a row now for the NASDAQ, settling at 18,188. The S&P 500 also extending its record rally, up 28 points today to a record closing high. And we have the Dow not quite in the plus column today, down 24 points at 39,308. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, in on today's rally, up nearly $6 at 128 and change. Amazon pulling back of 241 to 197 and change. Paramount Global is up slightly, up 74 cents to 1146. Apple moving higher by more than $1 at 221 and change. Tesla up more than $15 today at 246.39. On the flip side, shares of Walgreens down 47 cents to 1110. Taking a look at the yield in the 10-year note, it has moved to 4.36%. In the crypto space, we see Bitcoin at the moment up about 600 at 60,245, Ethereum up 39 at 3,295, and Doge at 12 cents. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Happy 4th of July holiday weekend. The market will be closed tomorrow for the 4th of July. A lot of folks will be taking a Friday off as well. We'll be getting the big enchilada of monthly economic reports on Friday, by the way, and that is the monthly jobs report from the Labor Department for the month of June. The stock market putting in a mixed performance today with both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 ending at record highs. Taxes certainly in focus as we move closer to the November presidential election. More attention is being focused on the different view on tax policy between the two major candidates, with President Biden vowing to raise taxes, President Trump vowing to cut taxes, and a recent G20 proposal for a globally coordinated wealth tax on the world's billionaires getting a lot of attention, also highlighting a system being developed by that Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is looking to basically raise taxes on everything. Thankfully, keeping track of all this is Adam Michel, Director of the Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. He focuses on analyzing the economic and budgetary effects of taxation here in the United States. Happy 4th of July weekend to you, Adam, and thanks for coming to the line here this afternoon.
To you as well. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about your latest article focused on this idea of this global tax that group is talking about, and, of course, the big contrast, some of which we heard during that debate between the two presidential candidates.
Yeah, you set it up well there. There's the latest proposal for a new international tax system is coming out of the G20, but I think it highlights other activities that are actually further along in the process. The OECD has a plan that is actually being implemented in many countries right now, and there's a lot of pressure in Congress for the United States to adopt what is being called a global minimum tax on large corporations. And this is, in my view, just the first step towards the sort of ultimate goal of these international organizations, and that's not just to have minimum taxes on corporations, but to also have minimum taxes on personal income, minimum taxes on wealth, and ultimately minimum taxes on things like carbon and other politically unpopular energy sources. And so my call to action for voters and for members of Congress is we really need to stop these things in their track now before they get further down the road. The United States is funding the Organization for Economic Development to the tune of 20% of their budget. We should be cutting off that funding and really reconsidering how the United States is engaging with these proposals that ultimately take away our domestic sovereignty, which I think is important given the 4th of July coming up tomorrow.
Perfect timing on this. And so who's putting the pressure on lawmakers to do this? I know the current Treasury Secretary, former Fed Chair, Janet Yellen, has spoken in favor of this global tax structure. That's certainly significant. But who else is on your radar screen on this?
Yeah, so the Biden administration, led by Treasury Secretary Yellen, have really been the driving force creating these international tools in order to implement global tax systems in general. This newest proposal for a wealth tax has the typical supporters in Congress. There's been a letter that's been written by Bernie, that's been signed by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and the ultra liberal squad in the House that are pushing the Treasury Secretary in the U.S. to throw their weight behind this newest iteration of a global minimum tax. It's being led by countries like France and Brazil, and it's ultimately these countries that have higher taxes domestically, that want to export this fiscal system to the rest of the world, that see this as an opening. This organization has created the tools to raise taxes on just about everything, and now we're seeing them really push these tools into new and innovative ways to make everything more expensive, more costly, not just in France and Brazil and elsewhere, but here in the United States as well.
All right, a lot happened during that presidential debate, and certainly a big difference in tax policy. I was waiting for the Reagan-Mondale moment where Mondale promised to raise taxes and lost 49 out of 50 states back in 1984. Basically, President Biden has pledged to raise taxes, while President Trump has vowed to lower taxes. What about the contrast between the two candidates on tax policy?
Yeah, there's quite a stark contrast. President Trump, at the debate, he highlighted the 2017 tax reforms and tax cuts that he championed, that made the United States internationally competitive as far as our business tax system went, and lowered taxes across the board for individuals. President Biden has, depending on the day and which statements you believe, has either said he's going to let all of those tax cuts expire, or that he wants to maintain just some of them, letting some of the most economically costly taxes snap back to those levels we saw in 2017, when businesses were fleeing the United States and investment's contribution to economic growth and wage gains was turning negative. And so there's really two paths in front of us. One is bigger government, more spending, financed with higher taxes on everyone, and hopefully a world in which we can continue to we can cut spending, we can continue to keep taxes low, and have a more sane fiscal union.
All right, and this, you mentioned it again, not raising taxes on anyone making over $400,000, but that's already been dispelled, right?
In a bunch of different ways, yes. The president wants to raise the business taxes across the board, which we know are ultimately not paid by the business themselves. Most businesses are legal fictions. Those taxes are paid by individuals. And even the president's own Treasury Department says that those business taxes are paid by workers, and they're paid by lower income workers more so than higher income workers. And so that's just one example of the way he wants to raise taxes on individuals. There's just simply no way that you can finance all the spending that he's proposed and not raise taxes on lower and middle class Americans. The math just simply doesn't work.
Adam Michel, thank you very much for advocating for all the taxpayers out there. That includes the entire audience, of course, and we do appreciate it and appreciate your insights and following this very closely, and we will be looking for your latest articles. That's Adam Michel, Director of the Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute, Patriot as well. Happy 4th to you and everybody there. Adam, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on. Happy 4th.
Thanks a lot, and let's get right out to the freeways now. Busy evening. Let's get the latest on your ride here in 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Happy birthday, USA. 4th of July is as American as mom and apple pie and fireworks. We love our fireworks, but unfortunately our pets, well, not so much. It can be terrifying to hear fireworks. Dogs, cats, birds, and other pets impacted by those scary noises. Some can end up at the vet's office after the 4th of July. Let's bring in Dr. Karen Halligan now, host of Collars and Cents. Yep, you heard me. Collars and Cents on your favorite station, 790 KBC. The show is airing Thursday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on 790 KBC. Dr. Halligan, author of the award-winning book, Doc Halligan's What Every Pet Owner Should Know, Prescriptions for Happy, Healthy Cats and Dogs. Doctor, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Wonderful to speak with you, and love your show. And let me ask you about this. This is a very important subject here. Already, of course, we've been hearing loud noises already with illegal fireworks going off here in the Southern California area. Now, of course, then the big displays will be happening tomorrow. Tell us what pet owners need to know about this time of the year.
Well, what's most tragic is that across the country, animal control officials have seen 30 to 60% increase in lost pets between July 4th and July 6th. So July 5th is like the busiest day at the shelter, and I know that because I used to be a shelter vet, and it's just staggering. So people have to understand that you don't even think your pet's going to get out, and, someone comes over, knocks on the door, bang, and the pet runs out, see? So I think that being said, prevention is the best way of trying to get your pet back. Heaven forbid it does get out. And the best way of doing that is just having a collar and tag that you can actually read the number, your cell phone or a phone number, because a lot of those tags, after years of wearing them, they get worn off and you can't read the number. So cats should have a breakaway collar, dogs regular collar, and the easiest way to get back reunited with your pet is if you have that collar on your pet right now and you can read the phone number. And in fact, the shelters are actually telling people, if you find a pet, please don't bring it to the shelter, because they have so many. And what really is sad is that if 50 come in, 50 have to go. And you know where they go, right? They're not miraculously getting adopted. So I think that's just a huge takeaway, something everybody can do right now. There's time to go buy yourself a collar, and you can even make the tags right in the stores so that they're protected if they get away.
On the live with Dr. Karen Halligan, host of Collars and Cents here on 790 KBC. It's excellent advice there, Doctor. And you raise an important point. Of course, a lot of people rely on the microchips and all that, but if a pet is found on the street and somebody doesn't have the device to read a microchip, just looking at a collar and reading off the phone number and calling the owner, that certainly that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and now they even have, the air tags, right? They have all these tags now that you can put on your pet that you would put on any other device to keep track of it. People are getting those too. So, yeah, it's really important for people to be responsible. Your cat or dog, they can't help themselves. And, dogs that have never reacted sometimes will all of a sudden react. In fact, my cat, Ricky, he never used to react. But they have a sense of hearing 4 times what we hear. And last year, oh my gosh, he was under the bed, just the big bang, and he never reacted. So sometimes when you think, oh, they're not going to react, you need to be prepared as if they are going to react and get frightened from the loud sounds.
Yeah, any thoughts about how to protect pets from these loud noises? Obviously, they do a good job protecting themselves when they have to. That situation you just described, but and are there any other any pets that are particularly vulnerable to these loud noises?
Well, I think dogs that have anxiety, and we're seeing a lot more of animals since the pandemic, I'd have to say, really, that have anxiety. And so what you should do is create a safe space for them. So put them in a room, all right, so they're not going to get out. Play their favorite music, put on a TV show, could be classical music. You can have toys in there. You want to distract them too. If all of a sudden you notice your pet is getting nervous, try to play a game with them instead of comforting them. I know it seems counterintuitive, but if you start, coddling them when they're getting scared, you're positively reinforcing them being scared versus just going, no, it's okay, let's play a game. Now, the other thing, which is really kind of new, is they actually have headphones for all different sizes of animals, right? From an itty-bitty cat to a German Shepherd that block out the sounds. So they really have that now that you could try putting on your pet if they're really petrified. And I always say, we have great drugs. I'm going on KBC tomorrow, Channel 7 at 7:30 live. I'm going to be bringing Leah and Pepper on live in studio. And Leah is confident, but Pepper is not. So I was with her last 4th of July, and I brought my drugs and administered some Celio because she gets nervous. So there's stuff you can give them, medical-wise if your pet really has a problem. But you don't really want to wait to the last minute. So like today, there's clinics that are open today. You could try to get something like that. I always mention, just because some people get stuck, you can do Benadryl, just plain old diphenhydramine, which is the active ingredient in Benadryl. You can do 1 milligram per pound safely on a dog or cat. So a 20-pound dog could take 25 milligrams. And you can give them that, and that actually will help, putting them in the room, trying to distract them. You don't want to leave them outside. People, it astonishes me. They'll, leave them outside and go to a party. And then they come home, and the pet's gone. You really don't want to take a chance. Believe me, it is the worst holiday of all the holidays for cats and dogs. More dogs are going to get euthanized this time of the year because of that holiday than any other holiday. And if your pet is not microchipped, they only have to hold him 3 days. See? So that's another case for microchipping, because if your pet's microchipped, even if it's not registered, they hold them 10 days. So the microchipping, which you mentioned, is also a good second form of ID, but nothing really takes place of that collar and tag, which can reunite your pet so fast, and they don't have to end up at the shelter.
Doc, thank you very much for that important information here ahead of the 4th of July holiday tomorrow. Dr. Karen Halligan, veterinarian, host of Collars and Scents, a great name, on your favorite station right here, 790 KBC. You can hear it Thursday nights, 6 to 7 p.m. And look for her on ABC 7 as well. She's the author of the award-winning book, Doc Halligan's What Every Pet Owner Should Know, Prescriptions for Happy, Healthy Cats and Dogs. Thank you very much for coming to the line here today.
Well, thank you for having me on, and let's hope we save some animals' lives today.
Absolutely. Happy and healthy 4th of July to all people as well as pets. Thank you. Today happens to be my cat's birthday, by the way, so thanks for coming on today. Happy birthday, 4th birthday to our beloved cat. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland keeps it real on the Mic Drop podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Mitch Aguiar.
Rest is definitely important, and I think a lot of people overlook rest. I've definitely taken time off when I get injuries. If you're training while you're injured and you're not doing things correctly, I think it's better to just kind of sit out, healed. And I've done that several times where I've had to take time off, and then when I come back, people are like, you got better.
Mic Drop, raw, unfiltered, intellectually sound, wherever you listen.